The origins of Proto-Afro-Asiatics. So we'll begin from Shem to Israel. This is part one of a video series. So in order to know who the ancient Hebrews of Israel are, we must understand who were their ancestors according to the scriptures. The Israelites were the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But who were the ancestors of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? According to the Hebrew text, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, ancient ancestor was a man named Shem. If you read Genesis chapter 11, verse 10 through 26, it says, "This is the genealogy of Shem. Shem was 100 years old and begot Arphaxad 2 years after the flood. After he begot Arphaxad, Shem lived 500 years and begot sons and daughters." So from 10 to 26 it reads, Arphaxad, Shelah, Eber, Peleg, Ru, Serg, Nahor. Now Terah lived 70 years and begot Abraham. So from the lineage, starting with Jacob to Israel, from Jacob to Isaac to Abraham, going from Abraham back to Shem, we see that this lineage is very specific and male-oriented. The Israelites basically are a Semitic people because they descend from Shem. According to outside sources or according to the academic understanding of the Israelites, they are also Semitic. The Israelites were a confederation of Iron Age Semitic-speaking tribes of the ancient Near East. The Hebrew people are mostly taken as synonymous with Semitic-speaking Israelites. So historically, the Israelites also spoke a Semitic language called Hebrew. Paleo-Hebrew script is the name used by modern scholars to describe the script found in Canaan, Canaanite inscriptions from the region of biblical Israel and Judea. Proto-Semitic, the North Semitic alphabet, is considered the earliest trace of alphabetic writing and the common ancestor of both the ancient South Arabian script and the Phoenician alphabet, which led to many modern alphabets, including the Greek alphabet. And so here is an example of the Proto-Semitic and Paleo-Hebrew. This is sort of like a timeline going backwards from where these scripts and languages come from. Paleo-Hebrew to Phoenician alphabet to Proto-Sinaitic script to even the Egyptian hieroglyphics. And here is a visual map showing from Paleo-Hebrew to Canaanite to Northwest Semitic to Central Semitic to Western Semitic and Proto-Semitic. So the Hebrew language also goes back to Proto-Semites, Proto-Semitic tongue. So the Israelites are ethnically a Semitic people because they descend from Shem. The Israelites are also linguistically Semitic because they descend from Shem. So the ancestors of the Israelites are Semites. Now, one important factor about the Semitic language is that it's part of the Afro-Asiatic language family. Afro-Asiatic, of, relating to, or being a family of languages widely distributed over southwestern Asia and Africa, including the Semitic. And then Semitic, of relating to or consisting of a subfamily of the Afro-Asiatic language family that includes languages such as Hebrew. Afro-Asiatic, also called Afro-Sam languages, formerly Hemito-Semitic or Semito-Hamitic languages of common origin found in the northern part of Africa, the Arabian Peninsula, and some islands and adjacent areas in Western Asia. So here's a map of the Afro-Asiatic languages, and it is spread across the Middle East and in Africa. So, with that being said, Israelites are an Afro-Asiatic Semitic people. Therefore, we should look into the origins of Semitic and Afro-Asiatic. First, we'll take an academic approach to the birth of the Semitic and Afro-Asiatics. Then we'll take a biblical approach, which will be in the next video, part 2. But since we're taking an academic approach, we'll dive into genetics as well. The main genetic term we need to understand is a haplogroup, which I done a video on. You can refer back to that video for more information, but I'll give a quick breakdown right now of what a haplogroup is. So a haplogroup is a genetic population group of people who share a common ancestor on either their paternal or maternal line. Particular haplogroups are associated with well-known ancestral groups such as the Vikings, Aboriginal Australians, and Celts. By the way, this is from Living DNA. What are haplogroups? Living DNA explain. So, maternal haplogroup. Maternal haplogroups from the mother are determined by assessing mitochondrial DNA, mtDNA. This also means that you will have the same maternal haplogroup as anyone else in your direct maternal line. Your mom, brother, sister, aunt, and grandmother on your mother's side follow that haplogroup back to its origin, and you'll find a single mutation occurred at some point in history. So to simplify this, a mitochondrial haplogroup is passed down from mother to daughter, mother to daughter, mother to daughter. But the son can also have it. A man can have a maternal haplogroup as well because men carry both the X and Y chromosome. Now, what are paternal haplogroups? The paternal haplogroup relates to your Y chromosome, and since that is the sex-determining chromosome for men, it is passed down from father to son. Also, women don't have a Y chromosome. They will not have a paternal haplogroup by default. However, they are able to find out what their paternal haplogroup is if a male relative from the father's side, ideally a brother, father, uncle, or grandfather, is also tested. So to simplify this, the Y chromosome is passed down from father to son, father to son, father to son, and women do not carry this Y chromosome. But if a woman wants to know the male lineage of her male relatives, the men will have to take it, such as a brother and an uncle, father. And the only reason women don't carry the Y chromosome is because, of course, they can't carry both chromosomes like men. Men are both X and Y, and women can't do this. So that is why. And so to conclude, just keep in mind these terms. Y DNA is paternal DNA, it's male, and then mtDNA is maternal DNA, that's female. And the men, as I said earlier, can carry both the paternal and the maternal, whereas women can only carry the maternal. So here's a visual representation of this. This is from ISOGG Wiki, and it says a haplogroup is a genetic population group of people who share a common ancestor on the paternal line and the maternal line. So have this as a representation of yourself, you having your father's paternal or Y DNA, and then your mother's maternal line. This would be if you was a man, you'll carry both, but if you was a female, you'll only carry the mother. Here's another visual representation of this. Let's say you, a man and a woman have a child, 2 children, a son and a daughter, and so the son will carry both the father's Y DNA and the mother's maternal DNA, represented in blue, and the sister will carry only the maternal DNA, represented in red. So, also haplogroups can be used to trace migrations, common descent, and ethnic origins. This is from What is a Haplogroup and What Can It Tell You About Your Family Tree. This is from ancestralfindings.com, and it reads, at its essence, a haplogroup is an ancestral clan. Some clans are the Vikings, Native Americans, all tribes, Celts, Aboriginal Australians, and other such groups. Your haplogroup tells you where your ancestors came from deep back in time. There are also male and female haplogroups, so you can see where your male and and female sides of the family originated back in prehistoric times. As you as with as with Y-DNA, which traces the male line from father to son, and maternal DNA, which traces the female line from mother to daughter, haplogroups also follow straight male and female descendancy lines. And here's a map to the right, basically representing haplogroups and people groups, like R1b being ancestral Eurasian clade, or haplogroup I1 being a North Proto-European clade. So here is haplogroups of the world. Every human being, every Homo sapiens sapien has a haplogroup, and here's basically just the distribution of these haplogroups throughout the world. So, linguists and geneticists commonly use haplogroups to find the genetic and linguistic origins and migrations of ancient ethnic populations. This is why it's important to know about haplogroups when studying the origins of Semitic and Afro-Asiatic. With that being said, let's begin. So, the origins of Afro-Asiatic and Semitic people. What are the genetic, linguistic, and ethnic origins of Semites and Afro-Asiatic? Another theory for the origin of Semites and Afro-Asiatic is North Africa, or the Sahara/Sahel. So let's look into the North African origins of Afro-Asiatics. The Semitic family is a member of the larger Afro-Asiatic family, all of whose other 5 or more branches have their origin in North Africa or the Maghreb. Largely for this reason, the ancestors of Proto-Semitic speakers were originally believed by some to have first arrived in the Middle East from North Africa, possibly as part of the operation of the Saharan pump around the late Neolithic. So here's a representation of Afro-Asiatics, the Green Sahara. So let's learn a little bit about that. The Sahara pump theory is a hypothesis that explains how fauna and flora migrated between Eurasia and Africa via a land bridge in the Levant region. It posits that extended periods of abundant rainfall lasting many thousands of years in Africa are associated with a green wet Sahara phase, during which larger lakes and more rivers existed. So here's an example of what the Green Sahara would have looked like. And down below is actually an image that once the Sahara had animals that couldn't live there today, such as giraffes and even elephants. So, going by the genetic route, Rikinet at a 2008 study associated the sub-Saharan influences detected in the Natufian samples with the migration of E1B1B lineages from North Africa to the Levant and then into Europe. Recently, it has been proposed that E3B originated in sub-Saharan Africa and expanded into the Near East and North Africa at the end of the Paleocene. A Mesolithic population carrying Group 3 lineages with the M35/M215 mutation expanded northwards from sub-Saharan Africa to North Africa and the Levant. Here's another study dealing with this, the Afro-Asiatic language phylum, African in origin or Asian. This is by Daniel F. McCall. So it reads, Greenberg at 1971 noted that 4 of the 5 members of his Afro-Asiatic language phylum are located on the African continent, and only 1 mainly in southwestern Asia. Therefore, he saw the mother language from which they descended as being in northeastern Africa. So here's a great book dealing with the origin of Semites called Semitic Languages, Outline of a Comparative Grammar by E. Lipsky. So it reads, this implies that the speakers of Proto-Semitic were still dwelling in Africa in the 5th millennium BC in the Neolithic subplume of 5,500 through 3,500 BC, when the Sahara's climate was much wetter, so that erosion took place as in other moist temperate or subtropical regions, and there was a proper system of rivers and vegetation consisting of grass with trees. A worsening of environmental conditions is indicated in North Africa in 3500 BC, with disappearance of vegetation, a major faunal break, desertification, and desertization. This might have been the period when the speakers of Proto-Semitic passed through the Nile Delta from the west to the east and reached Western Asia, where written documents of the 3rd millennium BC preserved notable traces of pre-Semitic, and in Mesopotamia also pre-Sumerian substratum. Thus, from North Africa, wave after wave of Semitic migrations would seem to have set forth. The earliest of these migrants and those who went furthest to the east were the Akkadians, who journeyed along the Fertile Crescent through Palestine and Syria and crossed over into Mesopotamia, reached northern Babylon in 3000 BC, and founded the first Semitic empire at Kish. The southern Semites would seem to have reached the moisture highlands of the Yemen and Hajnite after 2000 BC, following the collapse of the early Bronze Age culture in Palestine, while the Ethiopians would have crossed over to the Horn of Africa when drier conditions prevailed in southern Arabia in 15,000 through 500 BC. So again, here's a visual representation of Proto-Afro-Asiatics migrating out of North Africa when the Sahara was once green. Here is a good study to read from the Science magazine called The Origins of Afro-Asiatic. This is by Christopher Ehret, S.O.Y. Cato, and Paul Newman. So it reads, this extensive, well-grounded linguistic research places the Afro-Asiatic homeland in the southeastern Sahara or adjacent Horn of Africa. And when all of Afro-Asiatic branches are included, strongly indicate a pre-food producing Proto-Afro-Asiatic economy. A careful reading of Dinkoff shows his continuing adherence to his long-held position of an exclusive African origin for the family. He explicitly describes Proto-Afro-Asiatic vocabulary as consistent with non-food producing vocabulary and links it to pre-Neolithic cultures in the Levant and in Africa south of Egypt, noting the latter to be older. Dinkoff does revise his location for the common Semitic homeland, moving it from entirely within Northeast Africa to areas straddling the Nile Delta and Sinai, but continues to place the origins of the 5 other branches of Afro-Asiatic language family wholly in Africa. One interpretation of the archaeological data supports a pre-food producing population movement from Africa to the Levant, consistent with the linguistic argument for a pre-Neolithic migration of pre-Proto-Semitic speakers out of Africa via Sinai. Furthermore, the archaeology of northern Africa does not support the dynamic diffusion of farming populations from the Near East. From this continuity, it has been argued that the pre-food production Caspian peoples spoke languages ancestral to Berber and Syro-Arabian branches of Afro-Asiatic, placing the Proto-Afro-Asiatic period distinctly before 10,000 years ago. Furthermore, there is evidence that cattle domestication occurred independently in the early Heliocene Eastern Sahara earlier than the Near East, casting doubt on the idea of a single origin of food production in the Levant. A critical reading of the genetic data analysis, especially those of Y chromosome phylogeography and TAQL49AF haplotypes, supports the hypothesis of populations moving from the Horn or southeastern Sahara northward to the Nile Valley, Northwest Africa, the Levant, and Aegean. The geography of M35/215 lineages, which is of Horn/East African origin, is largely coordinated with the range of Afro-Asiatic languages. Underhill stated that this lineage was carried from Africa during the Mesolithic. The distributions of the Afro-Asiatic branches and its lineages can best be explained by invoking movements that originated in Africa and occurred before the emergence of food production as well as after. So here is this map of Haplogroup E throughout Africa. Here is the spread of Proto-Afro-Asiatic as it overlaps each other. And so this paper right here actually will show you how perfectly Haplogroup E matches this migration of Afro-Asiatics in North Africa. This paper is called The Phylogeography of Y Chromosome Binary Haplotypes and the Origins of Modern Human Populations. And here are the various scientists that were part of this study. The expansion of Neolithic farmers from the Middle East into Europe is also represented in the NRY data, although suggesting a relatively localized area of impact. As mentioned before, in the relation to Africa NRY history, a Mesolithic population carrying group 3 lineages with the M35/M215 mutation expanded northwards from sub-Saharan Africa to North Africa and the Levant. The Levantine population of farmers that dispersed into Europe during and after the Neolithic carried these African group 3 M35/M215 lineages. Group 3 lineages are found at high frequencies in Africa and relatively high frequencies in the Middle East and Southern Europe, characterized by M35/M215 mutation with occasional occurrences in Central Asia, Pakistan, and North America. Most notably, the PN2 transition unites two high frequencies, subclades, defined by M2/PN1/M180 mutations in sub-Saharan Africa and M35/M215 in North and East Africa, the Mediterranean basin, and Europe. We suggest a population with this subclade of the African YAP/M145/M203/2/PN2 cluster expanded into the South and Eastern Mediterranean at the end of the Paleocene. These lineages would have been introduced then from the Middle East into Southern Europe and to the lesser extent northern India and Pakistan by farmers during the Neolithic expansion. Overall, again, we see that Haplogroup E is the best candidate for the lineage of early Afro-Asiatic and Semitic populations. One of the top 3 beliefs for the origins of Afro-Asiatic, including Semites, is that they emerged from North Africa and carried Haplogroup E. Now, how would these early Afro-Asiatic and Semitic people look? So, I believe that the best phenotype would be the Saharan Ethiopid. The Saharan Ethiopid phenotype fits because of the time period. The Ethiopid type that was most common during the Neolithic, which is what we're covering for the origin of Afro-Asiatic and Haplogroup E, when the Sahara was still green, which fits with the green Sahara, as we said earlier. Their phenotype is reddish brown, black skin, tight curly hair, dully mesocephalic. The other phenotype that best fits is the West Ethiopid. Ethiopid subtype that was more widespread across the western Saharan region during the Neolithic, when the area was still a green savanna, which is what we've been covering. Reddish medium to dark brown skin, wavy to tightly curly hair, dolichocephalic, pseudo-Semitic features. Very interesting. Many appear in some individuals, somewhat prognathinous. There's always been a notion that Semites originated from Africa and that they are African people. This is something that you'll see a lot when it comes to the origin of Semites, that they are basically African in origin. A good book to read is Guns, Germs, and Steel by Jared Diamond, who says Greenberg determined that Semitic languages really form only one of 6 or more branches of a much larger language family, Afro-Asiatic. Even the Semitic subfamily itself is mainly African. 12 of its 19 surviving languages are confined to Ethiopia. This suggests that Afro-Asiatic languages arose in Africa and that only one branch of them spread to the Near East. Hence, it may have been Africa that gave birth to the languages spoken by the authors of the Old and New Testaments and the Quran, the moral pillars of Western civilization. And here is a conversation with Christopher Eritz, another linguist who covers the origins of Semites. He says, after all, the early Semites were just a few Africans arriving to find a lot of other people already in the area. One of the world's most renowned linguists is basically saying that early Semites were Africans. So, conclusion. The ancestors of the Israelites, Afro-Asiatic Semitic people, could have emerged from North Africa. Therefore, their genotype would likely be Y-DNA haplogroup E, and phenotypically, they would have looked like a Neolithic North African. And here's all the information put together. The DNA and the language migration being simultaneous, the phenotype, the spread of Afro-Asiatic languages, and the spread of haplogroup E, all fit as one. So we conclude with this study, the origins of Proto-Afro-Asiatics, and returning back to the main point, as I said, if the Israelites are a Semitic people, an Afro-Asiatic people, and if their ancestors are also a Proto-Semitic people, then it is likely that they would be carriers of haplogroup E, both their ancestors, their Proto-Semitic ancestors, and the Israelites themselves. And I'm basing this on logic and on the studies we've read about the origins of Afro-Asiatics, Proto-Semites, and haplogroup E. And I believe this is the best way to go about things when it comes to studying these people. And so far, this is what I am leaning towards when it comes to the Y chromosome, the Y DNA of the Israelites. It would be an E marker. And this is where we conclude. Hopefully you enjoyed this presentation. Leave a comment, like, and subscribe. And there will be more information and videos coming out soon. And we will have Q&As one day where you can ask me questions. And have a great day. Shalom.